Should you go off-grid or grid-tied?
Own or lease?
In this video, we dive deep into those kind of questions and a lot more, so stay tuned. Welcome to Sun Life, where we answer your questions about going solar, how it's going to save you money, and how the whole process works.
Make sure you hit that like button and subscribe. That way you get more of our content about stuff like this.
We're going to dive straight into the different types of solar energy systems.
What are the 3 types of solar energy systems?
How do you know that there's 3? Is this a test?
Yeah.
So the 3 types are off-grid, and then there's grid-tied owned systems and grid-tied lease systems. Each kind of system has its own pros and cons, and in this video we're going to get into that.
So Kyle, what's the deal with off-grid?
So if you were to go and ask a random person on the street that doesn't really know much about solar, what they thought solar was and how they thought it might work, they would probably describe an off-grid system. As the name implies, off-grid means you're not connected to the electricity grid. So think of like a cabin out in the woods somewhere, or, you know, people that are like off-grid doomsday preppers with bomb shelters, that kind of thing.
Or the not crazy ones who just want to be off the grid.
Yeah, there's that too. Off-grid solar energy systems use a combination of the following components. One, of course, your solar panels, charge controller, batteries, and a string inverter. The basic idea of the way an off-grid system operates is your solar panels absorb the energy that's coming down from the sun. They then send that power to a charge controller, which basically kind of controls how much the panels work and feeds that energy to the batteries in a metered way so that it doesn't damage your batteries. Once it's in your batteries, the power goes through an inverter, which takes direct current electricity, kind of similar to what your car uses, and converts that into alternating current electricity like what's in your house for all your appliances and other electronics. So you think you can tell me some of the benefits of having an off-grid system?
Well, when the power goes out for everybody else, you still have electricity.
True.
And you can put the panels on all sorts of different things like RVs or boats or sheds or the ground or your dog.
Well, I don't know if the dog would appreciate that, but yes, you probably could if you did it right. So that's all true. So when you have an off-grid system, you're just out on your own. You're your own little ecosystem of power.
Nobody can tell you no.
That's right. Nobody could tell you no.
Except for maybe your state and local ordinances.
Right. You would still have to apply for the proper building permits if it's going on a house. If it's going on something like an RV or a boat, I guess you wouldn't have to do something like that. I'm not really sure of all the process with that.
Don't break the law.
All right.
So what are the drawbacks, Kyle?
The drawbacks to an off-grid system are, is one, it's the most expensive system. It just has, you know, a lot of batteries. You've got to build it bigger than what your actual needs are, just in case you have some weather anomaly. You don't want to run out of electricity. So,
or if there's a volcano and the whole sky's covered in smoke and there's no sunlight for days and days. Or you live in Alaska and there's no sun for days and days.
Well, yeah, in those situations, yeah. But also, like, just in general, they have to be usually like 30% oversized just to make up for any degradation.
Rainy days.
Or any type of like degradation of the equipment or the panels or anything like that. The other problem is there's not as many contractors who install them, so most likely with an off-grid system you're going to end up needing to do it yourself. And then you end up having to shoulder the permitting, which is more difficult with an off-grid system. There's more safety concerns, there's batteries, there's just different wiring required for it. It requires more permitting, and a lot of places won't even allow you to permit an off-grid system. If you're living in town, they're not going to let you just cut the cord with the utility company. You're going to have to still be connected to them, and then you won't have an off-grid system. Batteries are expensive to maintain. They can range from like $300 a cell on the low end, all the way up to like $1,000 a cell for your batteries. And they don't last forever. You're gonna have to replace them from time to time. And you have a finite amount of energy. You're not getting your power directly from your panels. It's your panels are charging batteries, which are using power from. So, you know, once those batteries are empty, if you don't have panels running, if the sun's down, if it's nighttime, if it's winter time, and you have short days and you run out of power, that's it. You're gonna have to find another way, like a generator or something like that. Now we'll get into grid-tied systems. And grid-tied systems are the most common solar energy systems used on residential homes. Can you tell me what components are required for a grid-tied system?
Everything but the batteries, and you would need a net meter, which would be provided by the utility company.
Kind of close. There is a little bit more of a variation than that. Still use the same kind of panels, but instead with a grid-tied system, you would use micro inverters, which is an inverter attached to each individual panel. It's kind of like the brains of the operation because they do both the charging and the conversion of direct current to alternating current. And then the utility company will come out and swap your meter, which measures the power just like you have now, to one that can measure it going both ways. So some of the benefits of having a grid-tied system is you never run out of electricity. So if you use more electricity than you produced, it doesn't just shut off. You would just buy that excess electricity from the utility company, usually for the same rate that all your neighbors are paying when they don't have solar. And it's much easier to permit. This is very, very common. A lot of states are making regulation that streamlines the permitting process to build on a grid-tied solar array. There's tons of companies out there that can install them. I work for a company that installs them. I know of at least 10 national companies and probably hundreds, maybe even thousands of smaller local companies across the United States. Usually a grid-tied system is cheaper than an off-grid system because the permits are cheaper, there's less components, and there's companies that are really good at installing them that have streamlined this whole process and found every way possible to cut costs on it while still delivering a really good product. There's no batteries required, so not only is it cheaper on the front end, but it's cheaper in the long term because you're not maintaining those batteries. So what do you think one drawback to having a grid-tied system would be?
Unless you add a battery or a backup generator, you're going to lose power when the power company does.
Yep, exactly, because the power company is your battery at this point. Now you can always add a backup generator or a backup battery system to your house, whether or not you have solar, in which case that wouldn't be the situation anymore. But the only thing you're doing with solar panels when you have a grid-tied system normally is you're just adding an appliance that cuts down your bill. That's it. This is not about emergency preparedness. This is just really a money-saving or environmental saving proposition. You still have an account with the utility company, and some people really don't like that. At the end of the day, a utility company for the most part is going to be a monopoly, and if you have some type of moral offense to it, and that's a big reason why you want to go solar, the only way you're going to get out of having an account with the utility company is by finding a way to install an off-grid system. Before I say anything, what do you think the difference would be between leasing your solar panels and buying your solar panels?
If you're leasing them, they're not yours, so you're going to be paying a company for the privilege to have them, and then eventually they come take them back. But if you buy them, they're yours, and you get to keep them forever.
So what do you think happens when you lease a car versus buy a car?
I've never leased a car, so I don't know.
Well, that's a good thing.
I guess you get to have it for like X number of miles for
Right.
a certain price a month, and then you give the car back after a decided amount of time.
The difference between leasing a grid-tied system and owning a grid-tied system is purely financial. They're still the same equipment, they still provide the same operation, but where you see the difference is to your pocket. start off, it's going to be cheaper per month to lease. Of course it would be, right? Because you don't own the product, you're just borrowing the product. And over short time scales, leasing sometimes makes sense, but solar is not a short-term decision that you're making. Even the leasing programs are typically 20 to 25 year commitments. And the problem is they devalue your home because you're adding a really complex leasing contract to the sale of your home that you've got to convince somebody else of the value proposition of. And the general opinion among people who deal with solar is that leasing isn't good. So even any benefit you would have from somebody that was specifically looking for a house with solar on it already, which does happen, they're not going to want to buy the house with the lease panels. They're going to want to buy the house with the owned panels every time. So that'll always be a drawback. It usually devalues your house, like I said. You don't get any of the tax incentive when you lease your panels. The leasing company takes those tax credits. And those are sizable. They're usually between $5,000 and $20,000 for the tax credits that you're just leaving on the table. Now, I'm not directly familiar what the actual payments on a leasing program are, but my guess is that they're a little bit cheaper. Of course, they have no money down because even buying panels right now is zero money down. So, you know, there's those benefits, but it's still a long-term commitment and you don't get any of that full ownership benefit for your commitment. And there's not even a benefit on the maintenance side anymore, because even when you buy solar panels, most mainstream solar equipment manufacturers have 25-year warranty standard. Companies like Enphase, who produces microinverters, most of the industry uses their microinverters. I'm sure there's a little bit of variation, but I know Enphase has a 25-year manufacturer warranty. I know that every panel manufacturer I've ever dealt with has a 25-year warranty. So there's not really a maintenance cost here to even really consider. You're not benefiting from it that way, even if a company might try to leverage that. Now, when you buy, you now own that product. It's installed on your house, just like, you know, if you put a new countertop in, that would add value to your house. Back in 2015, Lawrence Berkeley National Lab did a nationwide study, and this is before there was a lot of people that even had solar. They found that on average, having solar on your house adds about $4 per watt in value to a home.
How many watts does the system end up being usually?
So on average, in my area, the systems that we install usually fall around 7.5 kilowatts. So a kilowatt is 1,000 watts. So 7,500 times 4, that ends up working out to about $30,000 in equity in a person's house. Plus, you know, with a system about that size, they probably get like another $7,000 tax credit on top of that.
Wow. Okay.
Yep. So when you kind of put all those numbers together, those are all things you're not going to get. You're basically leaving $37,000 on the table by leasing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Does
crazy.
not seem to be worth it.
Yeah. Now you can always buy the panels at the end of the lease. You know, if you're still around in 25 years when that lease ends, you'll have to pay money to do it at that time. So there's that. So you'll be renting them, and then they're going to say, okay, now give us another 10 grand and you'll own it. You'll have to come up with that in a lump sum, which would kind of suck. I would rather just go ahead and buy it. You know, the financing programs that are being offered right now for most solar is 0 down, about 3% interest on even a 25-year note, and you can go shorter, but even 25-year notes are getting 3% interest, so there's no reason not to do it.
Wow.
Yep. Any other questions?
My nose itches.
Yeah.
My face itches.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you everybody for watching. And again, subscribe for more. Smash that like button. Throw in the comments if you have any questions. I will do my best to answer in the next video. And we'll catch everybody in the next one.